All right, we're multitasking here in the Politics Barn on this Wednesday, October 11th. Trying to get some exercise here at midday. But I did want to do a next episode here. We've had a number of major events happen in the past week or so. The Hamas-Israel war, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announcing he's running for president. So these are the main topics of today's politics trail, if you will, as I try to drop some weight here. Believe it or not, people out there, I used to be in good shape. That was a long time ago, it seems, but when was it? 2017? I ran the Marine Corps Marathon, that being my 6th marathon. And since then, well, I've just let myself go, become old and fat. I kind of like to drop some weight again and maybe even run again. But at any rate, so what happened over the weekend? Well, I guess Hamas, and I've had to do some research on this because, frankly, when I see stories about Israel, Palestine, Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, Damascus, ISIS, etc., 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 my eyes just glaze over. They've been fighting over there for 2,000 years, probably more. I just don't care. It's like, the Israelis bombed a Palestinian settlement today. Okay. Another day ending in Y. Or, Hamas blew up a bus in Jerusalem. Well, whatever. I mean, that just happens, it seems to me, every other day. So I just haven't really paid attention to what's going on over there. So I had to kind of educate myself a little bit, and I'm still very ignorant. So, this commentary, keep that in mind. I do not style myself as any sort of expert in this. But on the other hand, I have no agenda either. You have to be careful about that when you listen to these, quote, experts on whatever channel you watch. They're generally pushing an agenda. Hamas, I guess, controls the Gaza Strip. So if you look at Israel on a map, I think we all kind of have a basic idea of what Israel looks like. At the far southern tip, on the other side of the Israeli border, is this strip of land that abuts against the Mediterranean Sea. To me, it looks like it's about the size of, say, Myrtle Beach, that long strip of American tourism we're pretty much familiar with down in South Carolina. Except there's about, 3 million people that live there. So Gaza's pretty heavily populated, even though I don't think there's any nameable city there. In other words, they don't all live in Gaza City. It's just Gaza. I guess it seems like where they're at, it should be a tourist haven, but then, these are Arabs, and they're generally no fun people, so I don't imagine it is that nice of a place. So I guess that's where Hamas is, and I guess they're in charge there, I guess, that the people that live there, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe the people that live there have elected the Hamas people to be in charge. Now, I don't know what that means when it says they've elected, you know, like a fair election or we're going to win no matter what election, and you can call it an election or you can call it a C-election or you can call it anything you want, but we're in charge. So that's Hamas, and I guess their stated goal is to kill Israel. I guess they hate Israel. Honestly, I have no idea what their goal is now that I think about it. I don't know if their goal is to have a territory of their own. In a way, it seems like they have a territory of their own. It's called Gaza. But, I'm sure they want some of Israel's territory. Then in the north, I guess you got Hezbollah, which again, I guess that's just the same as Hamas, except it's in the north. So I guess now Hamas sneak attack this weekend, coming across the Israeli border, killing all kind of civilians, taking a couple hundred hostage. I think it might have been 10 Americans in there, although I don't know what that means. Is that 10 Israelis that happen to have an American dual citizenship? I think that's probably what that means. I doubt Bill from Kansas was taken hostage. It was probably Israeli citizens who happened to have a dual American citizenship. Whoop. Hi. Yes, it is. Well, he had his headphones on, so he didn't get to participate in the politics trail. But at any rate, I think we all saw the news of what these guys did. So I've been thinking about, what does this mean? I mean, I guess people are making their positions. Some people have hard and fast feelings on this stuff. In other words, there are a lot of people out there that root for the Palestinians. And then there are a lot of people out there that root for Israel. And then there are people like me that don't care. And I guess I'm examining my don't care position, seeing if I'm in the wrong place or not. What I've been trying to figure out is why. Why did this happen? What is the impetus? What is Hamas? I think we can agree Hamas made these attacks. They were too big to be done by a group pretending to be Hamas. And for that matter, Hamas has basically just said, yep, that was us, we did it. So, after years, I think, of relative peace, right? Hamas makes these huge attacks, which Israel is calling their 9/11. And right there, my antenna went up, because 9/11 was a terrible, awful attack which had very deep ramifications for this country, most of which we did to ourselves. We're still wrangling with horrible, awful things like the Patriot Act, which has been turned against us. Normal Americans are being surveilled, harassed, censored, silenced due to the Patriot Act, which 9/11 was a pretense to pass that sort of thing. And most people knew it at the time, I think, that that's what was going to happen, or I should say smart people. And sure enough. So, if Israel's calling this their 9/11, look out. This event could spiral into something very, very significant. So Hamas initiated this. But who wins with what they're doing? And I think the answer here is what the game plan, I think, is that Hamas is trying to get Iran involved in this. Hamas, in no way, shape, or form, can handle Israel on its own. It's just, it's just a mismatch. They don't have the capability. They're not big enough. They don't have the weaponry. They don't have the people. So, but if they could get Iran involved, now you might be able to do real damage to the state of Israel. I don't think Iran was involved in this. Now, I know that flies in the face of the current narrative, but the current narrative is very suspicious that these attacks, and I don't have the timeline exactly memorized, but more or less the timeline was these attacks happened on like a Saturday morning, I think, and by Saturday evening, we not only knew who did it, but who planned the attack. That doesn't make any sense. In other words, how could you be caught totally by surprise with these attacks? Mossad, CIA, Israeli American governments. You're totally caught with your pants down, and just 12 hours later, you know not only who did it, but who planned it. Well, that didn't make any sense at all. Articles coming out in the Wall Street Journal stating authoritatively that Iran planned the attack. Now, Iran, for their part in this, they've pretty definitively denied involvement. Take that as you will. They've said, no, we did not have anything to do with it. No, no, no. I'm pretty sure I read that. I'm pretty sure I'm right on them, on the fact that they said that. What I think happened was Hamas initiated this on their own, probably just in a desperate attempt to stay relevant. Especially the hardliners in that group. They're probably starting to say, we're getting all too comfortable here in Gaza. Our sworn mission is to destroy the Israelis. When are we going to get with that? So they were able to plan and gin up this attack and launch it. Now, do I think that this was a total shock to the Western powers? No, I do not. I do not think that at all. I just don't buy it. I think the Mossad, I think CIA knew perfectly well this attack was about to happen and let it happen because it serves their purposes. The people in power in the United States want war. They want a perpetual war that never ends, is never won, it just never ends. And right now they're in trouble because their perpetual war is over there in the Ukraine, and the American people, via their representatives in the House, are getting tired of paying for it. And if we pull the plug on the money, that war's going to end right quick. So these people are nervous they need another war. Well, what better place to start one than in the Middle East? Now I'm going to take a break here. We got bicyclists coming. All right, where was I? I think the CIA probably knew about these attacks, but since it fits what they want to happen, start an endless war, or continue an endless war if you lump in the Ukrainian thing. I'm sure they did exactly nothing to stop it. In fact, they probably did what they could to encourage it. The sort of thing where, you tacitly give the green light to these guys and say, yes, the United States will not stop your attack on that weekend. Now we'll stand in the way after that, but you're going to get a free run at those people to do what you want to do. I think the nature of the attacks are telling. In other words, Hamas assume now they got total surprise. You know, that's the story we're being fed, that they got total surprise. They could have gone over there and hit military installations of the Israelis. They could have hit key infrastructure points, power plants, water plants, those type of things. Air Force bases. Could have captured some Israeli soldiers. Could have basically declared a military victory and would not be looked upon as this heinous villain that they are now. But they didn't do that, of course. They didn't want to do that. They want to be viewed as these horrible, barbaric villains. That the nature of the attack is designed to elicit a response. That's what these guys want. They want a response. So, you know, I'm thinking so far, this is all going according to Hamas's playbook. They want the Israelis to invade over there. They want the Israelis to turn that Gaza Strip into a parking lot. Because then they look like the good guys. Not only that, then they can get their brethren in the north, Hezbollah. They'll get engaged, they figure. They're not just going to sit down by and let the infidel Israelis kick the shit out of Muslims to the south. And hopefully, their real plan is to get the Iranians involved. They want them to come in on this. You know, I think this is all just one, you know, a small, relatively powerless group trying to maximize its power and leverage it such that they cause far more damage than they could all by themselves. They're trying to turn this into a regional war. Now, of course, the United States is all in on that. But it breaks down along perhaps different lines than the Ukrainian war. In other words, the Democrats are 100% behind the Ukrainian war. I have no idea why. Perhaps they've convinced themselves that Vladimir Putin cost Hillary Clinton the White House. I would say that's complete nonsense, but you're asking me to go in the head of a Democrat. You know, who knows what's in there? Probably nothing. So it's hard to figure that one out. But as far as the Palestinians go, you know, you've got a large section of the Democrat Party that loves the Palestinians and does not like Israel. And then you have another chunk of the Democrat Party that loves Israel. And for the most part, the Republican Party loves Israel. And then you have a small fringe of the Republican Party, like me, Ron Paul, Tucker Carlson. We're just suspicious of the whole thing because we just see this as just another endless foreign incursion that we're being expected to get involved in. Just like the Ukrainian war, while things are actually pretty bad here at home. And we'd like to see our elected politicians take care of business here at home rather than worrying about people half a world away. So this is my take, that Hamas is trying to make this a regional war of essentially another proxy war, the United States versus Iran, and whoever will jump on the Iranian side. You know, that's another thing you gotta be careful of. Will Iran be all by themselves? Will the Saudis go with them? Will China go with them? Figuring that'll ensure them a never-ending supply of oil. that they back the Iranians in this type of deal. I don't know I'm going to have a whole lot of influence here because I'm sure the vast majority of the American people are going to be, let's kill the Arabs. Let's let the Israelis do whatever they're going to do. And when they ask for help, we give it to them 10 times over. I figure a majority of Americans believe that. They're wrong. I'm not saying that the Israelis shouldn't be allowed to do what they're going to do, but I wouldn't help them do it. I think we send them, I think I heard somewhere that we send them $6 billion in aid a year. Well, you get your $6 billion, but you're not going to get any more. You know, you do what you do. I don't want those guys sitting over there game planning. Well, all right, we can wipe out Hamas and anyone that's ever said they voted for Hamas, and then we'll get Hezbollah, and then we'll take over Lebanon and the Gaza Strip and what have you. Well, I don't know. Do we have the people for that? Hell with that. The Americans will jump in. No. I don't want them planning like that. You know, Joe Biden can make whatever public pronouncements he likes, what flavor of ice cream he eats, and the last time he had a bowel movement. But behind closed doors, I want him telling those guys in Israel, mind your P's and Q's. We're not all the way down with this. You know, I don't care that they beheaded babies. We're not getting involved in the Third World War here. But I doubt that's going to happen because Joe Biden and his handlers, and by that I mean his handlers, Joe Biden doesn't have a coherent thought in his head other than I have to take a bowel movement. His handlers want a Third World War. I had a conversation with a Democrat this weekend, and it was as sour as you might expect. They're just brainwashed. They simply have no capacity to think outside of the narrative that's fed to them by ABC, CNN. I look at this Middle East thing and I say to myself, okay, you got to be careful here, because there are conspiracy theories all over the place with this stuff. So try to think clearly and critically. The problem with these Democrat voters is they don't see any conspiracy theories. In other words, they look at that narrative fed to them by the leftist Democrat media, and that's what they believe. And they simply think or seek no other information. Obviously, there have been all sort of, quote, conspiracy theories proven to be exactly true here in the past 8 years. So, when you believe the Democrat narrative 100% lockstep, you're mostly believing things that simply aren't true. And it's hard to get through to those sort of people. It really is. I forget where I was going with that, but RF Kennedy, let's talk about him. The guy's a wild card. Both parties believe that he's going to take more votes from them than he is from their opponents. That, you say, this guy's a leftist Democrat. How on earth is this guy going to take votes from Donald Trump? Well, Trump's not a traditional Republican, and Kennedy does speak authoritatively in areas of Trump's weakness, which is the pandemic. That was the, that and the behavior following the election. That was the weakest part of the Trump presidency. You know, Trump's, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, I can't quite get it. What's a king do when he doesn't want the throne anymore? Oh, that's it. His abdication of his power to Anthony Fauci if he wasn't running against a flat-out communist, that probably all by itself would disqualify him from office. But we have to back this guy because the alternative is communism, which we've been living under soft communism here for the past 3 years. So you got to back Trump, but needless to say, that's a weak spot for him. So Kennedy's one that says, hey, there's no way we should have shut everything down. There's no way we should have forced people to take these vaccines. And he speaks relatively authoritatively on the topic because, for the most part, I think that's what he was saying at the time. So, if you're a person that was damaged deeply by the pandemic and you're looking for vengeance, you might look at Kennedy and say, this guy wouldn't have locked me in my house for 2 years. He knew what was going on. He knew these pharmaceutical companies are crooked as a $3 bill. Now, I think Kennedy has a lot of leftist pop positions that he'll probably try to soften as he moves to the right and positions himself as a, quote, independent. He's a hardcore environmental Nazi. He wouldn't lock you in your home for 2 years because of the pandemic, but he would lock you in your home for 2 years because of climate change. That's just as bad. The guy's an authoritarian. And that's going to be Trump's challenge, is to make people see this guy for what he is. So this guy's no friend to liberty. He's a friend to liberty only on his terms, and that's called an authoritarian. Break time. One other point on Kennedy here, as far as will he help or will he hurt us? I think right now you have to not get too excited if you're a Republican. In other words, oh my God, how can we win with him in the race? He's going to take votes from Trump. Maybe. I think that Trump ought to be able to distinguish himself enough from Kennedy that he won't lose voters to Kennedy. In a way, I'm almost ready to say if he does that, we were going to lose anyway. But one thing you might be able to tell as far as who's worried about Kennedy the most is watch Biden. Biden has denied this guy Secret Service protection. When he was running in the Democrat primary, he's on his own, They're not giving him any Secret Service. They're making him pay for his own protection. Now, I'm not saying that Biden would exactly wants the guy to get shot, but if he did get shot, Biden wouldn't be too upset about it. Now, suddenly, if this guy gets Secret Service protection, and this is apparently something that the president makes a decision on, that I guess, I don't know there are any hard and fast rules of when you get Secret Service protection and when you don't. I mean, honestly, I kind of thought all those guys were protected all the way down to like congressmen, heads of agencies. I found out clearly that's not true because one of these congressmen got carjacked right there in the middle of what's allegedly a safe, respectable neighborhood in Washington, D.C. So clearly they don't have protection. If suddenly Kennedy gets protection, then the Democrats have game planned it out, and they know that he's more of a threat to Trump than he is to them. So they want him in the race then at that point. So that's one way you could tell that. Well, another thing about the elections I'm worried about is Trump and his fundraising. Biden's been on the air here in the Philadelphia market for months. Just commercials telling me how good I got it. More of the same, just lies telling me how ungrateful I am that I don't appreciate the lordly glory of Joe Biden. But people believe that. I say this again and again, and we have to keep repeating it because people don't believe it. I hate campaign commercials. Why do they run all these campaign commercials? Because they work. My God, because they work. Look at the Josh Shapiro, Doug Mastriano race. You know, you had two reasonable candidates. Had they both been equally funded, would have been a pretty close race. One had all the money in the world, one had no money. Mastriano had no money. Did not run one ad. Pause. The Democrat won by 15, 20 points. It was mostly a 50-50 state. You know, what does that tell you? You know, it tells you that the Democrat was on the air 24/7, telling you who he wanted you to believe his opponent was. And by the time he was done, he had you believing it. Much like the Democrat media. You know, the Democrat I had a conversation with this weekend, he should be a Republican. He should be a Republican voter. He has all the demographics to be a Republican voter, but he's not. I don't know how long he's been a Democrat, but he simply is brainwashed by the 24/7 news cycle from the Democrat media. Now, it's partially his fault because he's comfortable there and he never goes outside and seeks out alternative viewpoints. His critical thinking has been turned off. So, my point is that advertising works. God, does it work? Propaganda works. So, Trump's not competing at the moment. Joe Biden's competing. I find that very worrisome because that's what happened in 2020. Trump did not compete in the state of Pennsylvania, not in any serious way. And then he bitches and whines and cries that he lost when he really won. Well, had you spent more money, Mr. President, perhaps you would have won, but you didn't. And you can take those terms that I just said any way you want. But the truth of the matter is he is not the president at the moment. And I believe that's an undeniable fact. What else? Oh, I wanted to circle back, use a communist term there. See, propaganda works. I'm using their terminology. Where I think that I just think some people would be infuriated over my point about the CIA or the Mossad knowing about this attack over the weekend and allowing it to happen. There's precedents for this sort of thing, so don't get your panties all in a bunch. I think the history books are pretty clear that FDR wanted the United States to be attacked leading up to Pearl Harbor in 1941. Now, I don't know how he wanted it to be attacked or where or what, but he was taking all the measures he could possibly think of to try to goad Japan into an attack. Now, does that make him a monster? Does that make him a villain? No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that we can say history vindicated his tactics in that the United States needed to get into that war. My reading of history is generally the United States would be better if it just stayed out of these wars. I think Hitler presented a unique evil that needed to be confronted. I think Roosevelt noticed that. Oh, break time. We're both shooting our own podcast, so he's in his own world, I'm in my own world. Anyway, back to the Roosevelt. Hitler needed to be confronted, and I think FDR was vindicated by the history books about getting us into the war. Had Hitler attacked us at some point, it might have been years later, when Hitler was in a much more powerful position, and he would have been much more difficult to defeat. There's actually a good book about that. It's written by Newt Gingrich, of all people. It's called 1945. It's an alternate history book. The main point of the book is, what if Hitler had not declared war on the United States after Pearl Harbor? In other words, Roosevelt had a blank check from the country to go kick the shit out of Japan. Germany wasn't part of that deal, and that's what FDR wanted. He wanted to go after all of them, not just Japan, and he was not given that. But then Hitler gave us a gift, and he jumped in and said, yeah, I'll take you all on. And Gingrich's point, and I think it's a valid one, that was a major blunder on behalf of the Third Reich, because America probably would not have jumped in on that German-European war had Hitler not inserted himself into the conversation. So the book's about what if Hitler, I think the way Gingrich wrote it was that Hitler had been knocked unconscious for a week, and when he woke up, the United States was at war with Japan, and he got talked out of jumping in, and then just how that went. But at any rate, there's precedence for countries knowing about dastardly attacks that are about to happen and simply letting them happen because they want the follow-up consequences. And I would argue that the CIA, and probably the Mossad too, aren't unhappy that those attacks took place, because this means now war, and war for the continual state, for the deep state, for the military industrial complex. That's what they want. That's what they've always wanted. Look up 1960, outgoing President Dwight Eisenhower. I think for the most part regarded as American hero. He told us, beware the military industrial complex, and a lot of people were like, that's weird. What's that mean? Our great general, our great hero is a conspiracy theorist? Well, I think he was exactly right. Probably he's the one that originally coined the phrase, even though he didn't use it, deep state. So, one other thought here. I guess the House is attempting to come up with a speaker as I'm walking here, and I think it was down, who knows, the names I'd seen it narrowed to were Scalise. He's I don't have bad things to say about Scalise. I don't know him other than he bears the scars of fighting the communists. You know, he was shot by a communist, almost killed. Now, we don't talk about that because that's leftist violence against Americans, and that's a taboo subject, so we're not allowed to talk about when the left commits political violence. My Democrat friend, he doesn't know anything about that, I'm sure. If I told him, you know, the guy running for Speaker of the House was almost killed by a communist, he'd say, no, that never happened. But in fact, it did happen. Shot at a baseball game. Shot at and hit at a congressional baseball practice. And the other one's Jim Jordan. He's probably got more conservative bona fides than Scalise. Jordan has taken a more hard line on no more Ukraine funding, and that's what this war, civil GOP war, is about, is whether or not we're going to keep funding these wars. Now I find it, again, don't you find it suspicious that all of a sudden, as the Ukrainian funding is about to be turned off, suddenly Israel is thrown into the mix. Shazam, how fortuitous. So the deep state is going to try to attempt to tie the two together and force the Republicans that have made umpteen pronouncements of their undying loyalty to Israel. They're going to force them to vote for the aid. Timeout. Now my guess is that Scalise will get it. Or even if Jordan gets it, I think the aid is going to be forthcoming. They'll get the votes. Oddly enough, you'll have votes on the right against it. You'll have some votes on the left against it. But in the middle, everybody will line up. And it'll probably be a huge number too. An absolute huge number. Because, my God, we cannot say no to Israel. We have to say yes to Israel. Can you detect my sarcasm in my voice? We got a country with a wide open border being invaded daily, and these politicians refuse to enforce the law. In today's lawfare society, I would argue that they're all felons. It seems to me when you willfully disregard your duty to enforce the law, I would say that makes you complicit in the crime. It makes you a conspirator. So, obviously, my theory of that will never be brought to trial by the same people who are guilty of committing it. But it makes you pretty aggravated when we have to sit here and be lectured to by the people that are allowing our country to be invaded, that we need to rush over and help some other country or we're bad. It's like, why don't you protect our own country? That's what I elected you to do first and foremost. If you had done that, perhaps we could talk about the other thing. But you haven't. And it's not like it's an accident. We know you're doing it on purpose. It's the same old story. The Democrats want the people because they think they can turn their bodies into votes and turn it into perpetual power. And the Republicans are being paid to do it by corporations that want cheap labor. And we are caught, well, we're not really caught in the middle, we're just forgotten about. It's like we don't matter. So yeah, if I was a congressman, there's no way in hell I'd be voting for aid packages. I don't care if Israel's in the package or not. Israel has plenty of money, and nothing's happened to them yet. They haven't been invaded. The two countries that are lobbing rockets at them don't have the capacity to invade them. Israel has enough funding to reset the status quo, and that's what they should do. Further than that, they're on their own. This is what we believe here on the politics trail. All right, signing off. I saw another guy that was censored today. My Democrat friend I talked to this weekend, he doesn't believe that's happening. I told him I'd had 2 videos taken down, and he said, "For what?" I told him, and you could tell in his voice he thought I was lying to him. I said, they don't tell you. They just take it down. Tell you you violated standards. And anybody that is involved in it knows what's going on. No standards were violated other than the standard that you spoke against the people in power. That's the standard. If I stood there and told you the vaccines were good, that the lockdowns were good, that the plague had started with a bat, I'd be telling you bullshit, but they would allow it. So, I think the guy's name was Bob Lonsberry. Well, here rests the voice of Bob Lonsberry, sacrificed on the altar of free speech by Elon Musk, who is nobody's good guy. I still believe in free speech, though, and we'll speak again.